Hey guys, this is the third study in the series called No One Understands Jesus. This one is called The Creator Among Us. We're in the Gospel of John study. Thanks for joining us here. Before we get in, let's cover a couple of background issues. First of all, the first half of the book of John, you may remember, is called the Book of Signs because this is kind of the focus of the revelation of who Jesus is. Before the passion starts, before he goes to sacrifice his life for us. What we're studying today is the very first sign. It's super cool. We find Jesus at a wedding. This is how John 2 starts. On the third day there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. Okay, this is cool. What you got to understand about weddings at this time is they were a big deal. You know, weddings are a big deal today, but back then they were even bigger in some ways. It's really neat to consider what they were, how they worked. Basically, it went like this. If a guy, we'll call him John Smith, in the Smith household, courts a lady, we'll call her Sally Jones, over here, there comes a point in their relationship where he lets his intentions be made known, she agrees, and then the day comes, okay? What happens? He departs for a secret place. No one knows where he is except for his buddies, and they gather around him. At a certain time, then, he begins to make his intentions and get everything in order as the people, the girls around the girl, begin to gather around her and get everything ready. Then, as it progresses, what you see is the guys start to move forward. At one point, as the women come out to line up in front of the house, somebody would cry, "The groomsman cometh," or "the groomsman comes." That's when everything gets real formal, and then the ladies who are attending join the groomsmen, and they all come to the house together. Okay? They make this movement to the house, and then he goes in. There's a big announcement here, says that the groomsman is here. He's at the house. He goes in and gets his bride. He grabs her, and they literally lift her up, and the whole procession moves forward and takes her into the house of the Smiths. That couple goes into a back room and consummates their marriage. They make love in a back room right there in the house, and they come out, and she has fulfilled her duty to marry him. She's given herself. The Jones side of the equation is done. She's given herself, okay? Then this big party starts. It's a big 7-day party in the Smith household. There's food, there's celebration, there's all sorts of things, and it literally lasts a full week or more. And that signifies that the Smith boy has done his part. See, it's a reciprocal thing. She gives herself, and she joins his family. He demonstrates that he can care for her with this party. Believe it or not, in that day, if you failed to host an adequate party, the Jones family would be highly, highly offended. They might even sue you. It's like marrying the girl before you can provide for her. That's kind of the picture. What happens, again, is she gives herself. That's the picture. She gives herself. That is her participation, her gift. His gift is the provision, the 7 days. That's when he checks off, and the marriage is validated in the sight of everyone. You got to understand that to understand how big this issue is that Jesus and his mom are going to encounter today. Before we get in this study, I like to ask a question every time. Let me ask you, could you, just off the top of your head, name any of Jesus' miracles from the Bible? Could you name any of them? You might think of him causing a lame man to walk, or even rising from the dead, raising Lazarus from the dead. It all starts, though, in this passage today. If I could be there to see any of them, it'd be tough. This one, though, this one is so cool. I don't know. It might be this one. It's just really interesting. This is where it all begins. as we jump into the study, the first question we'll see is, why do you think Jesus and his disciples were invited to this wedding in Cana? It goes on to say, from these verses, do you think that Mary was playing a role in the wedding feast? See, this was probably a family related to Jesus' mom and Jesus, okay? That's probably what's going on here. And Mary was probably playing a role in the wedding feast. You see these little things here. Mary knew that the wine ran out before the master of the feast did. She was very concerned about it. She told the servants what to do. There's all these indications that this is a family wedding. And when you think about it, the weddings you go to are close friends and family. That's kind of the way these things roll. So yes, this is probably a close family to Mary and Jesus. And Mary was probably playing a role in the wedding. That's what a lot of people think. Because when the wine runs out, it's the mother of Jesus who then comes to Jesus and says, they have no wine. And Jesus has this reply to her. He says, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. It's the first time we see that word hour in the whole book, and here comes the first miracle. This is a cool moment. Okay? And let's ask this question as we get in. Why would running out of wine be such a big deal? There we get into the issue of weddings in the ancient Near East. Wedding feasts followed the groom taking the bride to his home in a celebrative procession. We just saw that. Wedding feasts often lasted 7 days. A ruler of the feast oversaw the festivities, and it was possible to take legal action against the groom who failed to provide an appropriate wedding gift. Again, she's given herself. He's showing he can provide. That's the picture here. It's a big deal. Because this is Mary and this is Jesus, we got to ask the question, what do you think Mary was asking Jesus to do? Was she asking him to perform a miracle? There's no recorded miracles that Jesus did before this moment. There's no indication that she was asking for a miracle. But there's all these other things that have gone on. Consider this. Mary saw an angel named Gabriel announced the birth of Jesus to her. She was a virgin, if you'll remember. They called him Emmanuel, God's son. They talked about Elizabeth's son, John, the forerunner of the Messiah. When he's born, these shepherds come and call him the Lord. Wise men chase him down. Herod tried to kill him because he considered him a threat to his king, his role as king. You got Jesus grew in stature and favor with God and man. You got that verse. At age 12, he's in the temple teaching with the leaders. And they forgot him. Remember, they had to come back and get him. And he's sinless. Just think about that. He's sinless. How would you like to have a sinless brother? He began his ministry right before this. He's about age 30. The Spirit of God descended on him. John said, that's the guy. And all these people began to follow around him. All that has happened right now. So when she says, they have no wine, what's she asking for? We don't know. But she knows he can do just about anything. And she's seen him answer a lot of questions, I'm guessing. When Jesus said to her, woman, what does this have to do with me? To us, that can sound kind of rude, right? But Jesus wasn't being rude. If you look at the original language, this is a way of him kind of distancing himself from her. He's no longer really relating to her as just a child or as her son only, but as a peer. It is a common way to refer to a woman in his day and age, just to say woman. The word translated woman there. And there are plenty of, from this point on, we're going to see plenty of these things going on where you have to listen carefully to what Jesus says because no one understands him. No one understands him. That's a theme to our studies, if you'll remember. Soon after this, Jesus will be in the temple, and he'll cause an uproar. And when people confront him, he'll say, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. And they think he's talking about the physical temple. He was actually talking about his body. In a couple studies from here, we're going to talk about Jesus' discussion with Nicodemus. And Jesus, in that conversation, will say, you must be born, anothen is the Greek word. You must be born a second time. But really, what he means is you must be born from above. Nicodemus misunderstood that. We'll look at that. To the Samaritan woman, he says, to whoever drinks of the water I give, rivers of water will flow from within him. And she said, you have no bucket to get water with. No one understands him throughout the whole book. He's always talking on this level that we can only understand as we consider it later. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. You have to listen closely to the words of Jesus. When he says, my hour has not yet come, that's a key to the whole book. Okay? What did he mean by my hour has not yet come? This little phrase, hour, divides the whole book of John. He says, my hour has not yet come here. He'll say it again. At different times we'll see things like no one arrested Jesus because his hour had not yet come. There's this hour issue in his life. In John 12:23, Jesus turns around and just says to his followers, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified, and boom, the hour is here. He walks right into Jerusalem. He presents himself to the nation. They reject him, and he's crucified. At John 17:1, he says, the hour has come. God, glorify your Son. The hour is the passion. That's what he's talking about. It's interesting. As soon as he does what he's going to do at this wedding, a clock will start ticking. When that clock is done ticking, he will die on the cross. He knows that. He knows what he's about to do. I don't think Mary understood anything about what he was about to do, but she knew enough to trust him, and she said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. This is where it gets pretty interesting. Now, there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill those jars with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And then he said, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. Okay, this 6 stone water jars, what we have to understand about them, when it says they're rites of purification, this was the water on hand for the people as they come to the feast to wash their hands. They'd pour some water over their hands and clean their hands. This not only was a way of cleaning your hands just before you eat, but it was obedience to the law. It was required by the law that they do this. Okay. Jesus could have created wine in any way he chose. But it's interesting to us why he commanded the servants to fill the pots with water. He not only commanded them to fill them, but he commanded them to fill them with the result that they filled them up to the brim. Look at these things. You see, they're 20 to 30 gallons each. There's 6 of them. This is a whole lot of water. And he told them to take some of that water to the master of the feast, the guy in charge of the ceremony. Okay? Mary had said, do whatever he told you to do. Do whatever he tells you to do. And so those servants did it. They knew enough to obey Mary. She's probably partly in charge of this. They knew enough that something's going on here that they did it. But they're taking hand washing water in a cup to the master of the feast. What do you think they were thinking as they approached the master of the feast? They're probably thinking something like, holy cow, I'm about to hand this water to the master of the feast. I don't even know why I'm doing this. They probably don't have a clue what's going on. But boy, what's happened? This miracle is fantastic. This is a crazy, crazy act of creation, and it's hidden. It's behind the scenes, and it'll stay hidden for just a little while. Now, when the master of the feast tasted the water that's now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until just now. I am pretty sure that this was the best wine this master of the feast had ever tasted. I know that he'd tasted a lot of wine. He'd presided over a lot of weddings. But this wine was the best he'd ever tasted. Jesus gave him a fantastic gift just with this one cup of wine. And what did he give to this married couple? And who knew what was going on? The master's response is telling. It's actually more graphic in the original language. He's really celebrating this wine. He calls the guy over and just celebrates him in the presence of everyone. He just kind of says, this guy is providing like no one provides, is the issue. Of course, this guy was in trouble. He was not providing. He didn't have what he should have in order to provide for this girl. And Jesus, behind the scenes, gave him the best wine probably anyone has ever tasted right here. If you were there, if you were one of Jesus' disciples, what do you think you would have done? How do you think you would have reacted? Think about this groom. The master of the ceremony says, you're the best groom ever. And it's his wedding day. He's probably not thinking much. He's just happy. He's just happy. These humble servants, they're the first to really understand what's going on. Of course, Jesus knew, and his disciples, his followers, were beginning to clue in, but it'll take some time before everyone to know. This is a under-the-surface miracle, and it's an act of creation. What I want to say is this was good wine. This is between 600, guys, 600 to 1,000 bottles of wine that he's giving this family. Okay? That, at minimum, is a $45,000 gift. Jesus is just blessing this family. He's just stepping in and bringing joy. He's just blessing this couple. John described this as the first of Jesus' signs. And that leads us to ask, what was it a sign of? As we get into that, let's look at this. These Jewish purification jars held about 150 gallons each. They were sanitary, okay? They were hand washing for that purpose. And they were required by the law of Moses. Jesus was taking that which cleanses them, and he's showing he's got the power, and he's in their midst. He's the Son of God. He really is going to be the ultimate cleanser of them and all of us. Notice we don't have purification jars anymore. Jesus fulfilled that aspect of the law for us. He became our purity. He died for our sin. That's a key theme here. Another theme, water itself. Water, guys, is a pretty amazing phenomenon. Of course, you have to study it a little bit to appreciate this, but every day, about 260 cubic miles of water evaporates from our oceans and springs. That steam rises and mixes with other gases to form clouds, and a lot of those clouds are blown over land. As those clouds continue to rise into cooler temperatures, they constrict. The water is condensed and it comes down as rain or snow or ice. And of course, God has made water a specific way. It's the perfect solvent. 99.999% of everything that dissolves into water. That's why it dissolves all the nutrients in the soil. That's one of the amazing things about water. But another thing that's pretty amazing about it is it defies gravity. Water has a specific surface tension. And that surface tension is so precise and in a certain way that it defies gravity. When you put a tiny, tiny capillary tube in a bottle of water, the water will actually climb up that tube to the top. It has to be very tiny. That's what happens with every stalk on earth. Every single blade of grass. Every tree. And every grapevine. And those grapevines get so full of juice that they produce fruit. When that fruit sours, it produces wine, which was safer to drink in the ancient world than water. So what I'm saying is that Jesus, the Creator, has been producing wine from water all for thousands and thousands of years. And he did it here just to show who he is. Jesus makes wine from water every day. Moreover, Genesis 49 says that the Messiah will tie his colt to the choice vine and wash his garments in wine. Amos says the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes he who plants the seed. The mountains will drip sweet wine, and all the valleys will flow with it. Wine was a symbol of the Messiah's coming. Wine was this symbol of his presence with us, of the blessing that he'll bring. And it's awesome It's awesome to know the Messiah is with us. One definition of Christian maturity over the years has been conscious awareness of God's presence with me everywhere I go at all times. It's awesome that he came to be with us and he revealed himself to us. That's the story we're looking at today. It's the Creator among us. And it's neat to look at the details. Why do you suppose Jesus chose this event for his first miracle? Why did he choose a wedding for his first miracle? You may remember that the book of John is in many ways paralleling the book of Genesis. It starts with the same wording, right, in the beginning, and it presents Jesus as our Creator. It really is patterned after the opening chapters of Genesis in some ways. We've talked about that a little bit. Check this out. On the seventh day, God brought Eve to Adam and gave her to him, and the first marriage happened. The first family began. This little event happened 7 days after Jesus began his ministry. You have to look at the details to see it, but here we are. 7 days after he began his ministry. Jesus is at a wedding again and doing a miracle. It's just really cool that he chose a wedding to be his first place. He's bringing lots of joy. That's the message here. Boy, he's brought joy to us. This, the first of Jesus' signs, he did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Whew. That's a great story. It asks us, it says to us, do you believe Jesus is God? Do you believe in Jesus? What's your story? When did you come to Christ? Right now, are you believing in Jesus, or are other things distracting you? Where are you in that relationship? Do you believe he's bringing good things? That he's with us, here to bless us? Do you believe in Jesus? And what signs did God use to bring you to Christ? Your Bible study is probably made up of a bunch of believers and some people seeking out the truth and trying to find their way. What did God do to bring you to Christ? Did you come as a young child? Or did you come to Christ in college? What's your story? And do you think of Jesus as glorious? To be at this wedding, wow, I'd love to be at this wedding. I'd love to have seen it. I'd love to see Jesus in this subtle way do an act of creation to just flat bless this couple. How good he is. How good he's been to us. Do you think of Jesus as glorious? Can you just not get enough of him? Do you think of him as your hope, your joy? Do you know his glory? Do you know his glory? I hope these Bible study guys are the best part of your week. I'm real pleased to be here with you. This is the last question. Just meditate a little while. Why is Jesus so glorious? Guys, that's this study. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.